The test has begun. We'll go with that one. So welcome, everybody. This one will probably be pretty short today. I didn't have much in the way of input, so I'm going to cover a couple of things from the last meeting that a few people asked questions about, and a letter of interpretation that might be of interest to everyone here. But there we go. Okay, so are there any comments from the last meeting? We're going to talk about the once again the replacement of the aircraft documents. I didn't see Ernie Copeland up there, so I'm not sure if we'll get an answer on that. We're just going to review a couple of things at non-towered airports due to some input from DPEs around the country that saw the presentation from last month. We're going to discuss the Zoom registration again. I'm going to let Jim talk about that, cover some more scenarios, best practices. We'll have the point of contact reports and talk a little bit more about the Chapter 9 and the POH AFM supplements. So any DMS issues that anybody want to bring up? Okay, regarding the aircraft documents, we've been doing this one just about every month to try and get this squared away with the tattered or unreadable airworthiness registration certificates, and making sure that the aircraft do have the data plate installed on the airplane outside, normally on the left side underneath the stabilizer, horizontal stab, depending on the airplane. And the Seminole is on the very bottom of the aircraft. And Ernie was supposed to get back with me on the replacements. I haven't heard yet. He may not have heard yet too, since the office is still kind of in a lockdown mode as to how you get those replaced. But does anybody have any questions or comments about these documents?
I have a client I'm working with who's about ready to, we're about to do the instrument cross country. He should be ready for his check ride in about a month or less. We've been going over the documents in his airplane. He's got a TR-182 that he acquired a little under a year ago that's been extensively upgraded with all sorts of avionics. And we spent about 4 hours going through all the documents, making sure that we had what we thought were current AFM supplements, pilot guides that are listed in the AFM supplements as being mandatory on board. Still having issues trying to make sure things like he's got Nestec Autopilot, what software revision is on there. It pops up for a moment during the startup. And then what limitations does that instill on him? Can he do, it looks like he can do an ILS approach coupled with it, but I'm not sure whether he can do an RNAV LPV type approach with it. How deep into that stuff do you get on a check ride? Well,
since limitations overall, and generally speaking, limitations are one of those things that pilots just flat out have to know. If it's placarded, and what we started to do, fortunately, in the airline and corporate business, was anything that was placarded, we said there's no point in trying to memorize something that's written on a placard right in front of you. So let's save the brain cells for the stuff that we don't have access to in front of us. So that in that case, that's actually a good question, because the autopilots is probably the biggest unknown about what's on the airplane. How low can I take it? When can I engage it on takeoff? Those have to be in the AFM supplement. So there should be one for that AZDPEAG autopilot. If there isn't one with the paperwork, which I wouldn't be surprised the way these things transfer all over the place, you can get those from AZDPEAG, usually online. What it won't have is it won't have the aircraft serial number on it. It'll be the blank page, because it's a generic page that goes with that autopilot. And then just a second, the person installing it is usually the one that finishes filling it out by certifying the N number / serial number. Go ahead, Jim.
Sorry to cut you off. Somebody put a note in chat. Do we have a waiting room? Is there people in the waiting room?
I didn't start.
Yes, please check the waiting room. Somebody's trying to enter.
Okay.
I didn't think we had the waiting room enabled, but you should be able to go to participants.
Yes.
Thank you. Sorry to interrupt.
That's okay. Invite. Let's see. Invite. Yep. There we go. Got it. Okay. Yeah, there was one person in there. Okay. Thanks, Jim. Let's see what my chat is here. Oh, that's what it was. Okay.
Yeah. Thank you, Bob.
Thank you.
Okay. Yeah, apologize for this. This we're trying a whole new different process here. Trying to make it easier. We'll see if that actually works. Anyway, back to the and those are I like those questions because the thing, and we're gonna see that slide come up again, is the POH AFM Chapter 9 supplements is two things, is not taught very well. And your biggest issue is with the aircraft owners, not so much the schools. The schools pretty much have a fairly standardized fleet. But with the owners that have purchased these airplanes that have transferred ownership, God knows how many times, and those things get lost. But in that case, they can get the STEC AFM supplement, and you can call STEC for that if you can't find it online. But most of those are actually online, and then it's either printed by the person installing it, or it came with the components. But sometimes, like I had just had an individual who bought a used STEC, and while all the servos and everything's with it, there's no paperwork. So the paperwork disappeared. So what he has to do is just download it and give it to the avionics installer, and they'll certify it that way. But basically, it's knowing what the limitation is with that autopilot. So to answer your question, can it do a GPS approach? Normally, it's going to say yes. It's going to say yes for all types of navigation, VOR, not NDB, it won't do that, but VOR or GPS, and of course the precision approach, the ILS approach. But it'll have a limitation as to how low you can go. And there is a difference between a precision and non-precision approach for the automation, for the autopilots, even though you're pushing the same button. But it'll say, well, usually you're going to push the approach push button for the ILS and a nav button for the GPS VOR approaches, but it'll tell you how low it can be taken. And that's one of the things that I look for, is did they know how far down were they disconnecting that autopilot, at or before. You'll also notice something else. This popped up the other day. Look on the approach charts. In many cases, you will see a minimum coupled autopilot altitude. It's actually on the approach chart. We have one here at Phoenix. Even with the Airbus, we can only take it on an ILS down about 500-600 feet, something like that. So that's the other place that you want to look.
Yeah, the main question was about these supplements. He's getting these supplements directly from the manufacturer. As you say, they don't have the tail number or the serial number on them. And I just wanted to check, with the biggest community of DPEs I know, is that adequate to have a supplement that is not serial numbered for that particular unit? Is that okay?
Well, it's better than nothing before I say it's okay. If it's, and like I said, most of those are generic. So you could simply call STEC and say, can the install, or the A&P who's installed the equipment or is just doing the annual on the airplane, can they acknowledge that that's the unit? And
okay,
but it's better than.
No, I think I might know the legal answer.
Okay.
The technical answer. If anyone knows anything different than this, please correct me. My understanding is that the supplements for things like an autopilot never have a serial number or a tail number of the airplane. Instead, they have a revision number. And then in the approved supplement that is actually part of the POH, it'll either list the revision number that is to be included in the aircraft, or it'll simply say the latest revision. And it's up to the pilot in command to make sure they have the latest revision of that document. I believe that that's all you need to look for, Mike.
It depends, because my Garmin 530 that I had put in my 182 about 10 years ago, it had an AFM with an N number. It had an N number that was on the front page. So basically, Jim could be right. You got to look at the front page of the supplement, and it'll tell you what's required. But that's the other thing, is the revisions. It's hard for some of these people. They've had it installed 10 years ago, and there's been revisions to it, not only to the software, but to the documentation with it. So it can get messy. But
yeah, and the STEC autopilot is one thing. It pops up a revision number 6, which is covered in the AFM supplement he has. But then we're looking at the GTN 750, 650. He has a single supplement that applies to both the 750 and the 650. and it has a software revision number. And we had the discussion about that. That's different than the database, the navigation database date. And making
And
sure
they
that-
will be, because the navigation database change every 28 days.
Sure. And so he's clear on that. But same sort of thing. What capabilities does that GTN have? Any limitations that are in that supplement? And so we spent 4 hours of ground last week going through all the documentation he had and trying to find anything we needed to get updates on to try to make sure we have the latest and greatest on it.
Sure. Well, like I say, it's better than nothing. I don't think you would run into a problem with it, because the kicker is, are they operating it in accordance with? So aside from, but you need to know what that limitation is. So
Yeah.
get
And
paperwork somewhere.
one other question while I've got you here is on the subject of this autopilot, the AFM supplement and the pilot guide document something like a 38-step process for a pre-flight test.
Yeah.
Are you expecting him to do that on the instrument check ride?
Well, I'll leave that up to the other group, since I haven't done those in such a long time. Yes, they actually all do. The Cessna autopilot, the King that's in this new Cessnas, when they came out, it wasn't 30 steps, but it was quite a bit.
Yeah.
I'd have to leave that up to the rest of the group to how far they want to take that. I haven't seen in a long time the STEC requirement for that. The biggest thing is, can you disconnect it? Can you override it? And do you know what it's telling you?
Yep.
What its capabilities are?
Yeah, I mean, he's got an Aspen 1000 as well. We dove into the manual on that, and it says, okay, you got to do this battery check every 6 months. So we did a battery check on it, and it looks like the backup battery lasts about 3 or 4 minutes. So his call he was going to make today was to Aspen to see, do I need new battery? Am I doing this test right? And try to get that up to date. So we're trying to cover those bases.
I have that in my 182, and I've already replaced it twice. He probably will have to have that.
Yeah.
It's
What's
supposed
that
to last for 30 minutes, but it depends on which model he has too, because the newer models have a different battery in them than mine does. I bought it when those things first came out.
Dare I ask what that battery costs?
I can't even remember. It was not quite 4 digits without a decimal point. Yeah.
Just a comma.
Yeah, right. Something like that. And then the trick is trying to find the shops that can deal with Aspen. Not a lot of them do.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
they're pretty limited, even in Phoenix. Okay.
Thank you.
And thanks, Jim, for your input on that. Any other questions on this stuff, on this area? Nope. Okay. All right, just a review on this. After the meeting last month, we did a pretty extensive review on the operations at non-towered airports, and I got some interesting phone calls from people around the country about how they are experiencing the lack of knowledge for operations at non-towered airports. So just once again, if you're not using one on the check ride, I think it's still a good idea to at least do include it in the oral portion, like how would you get into this airport? How would you leave this airport? What do you need to say? Does everybody have to be talking? And what is it you're doing for collision avoidance? Because that's one of the biggest ones that they noticed, was there was very little. They were just counting on what was being said on the radio. And if somebody said they were somewhere, then that's what they went with. And of course, we know that's not really the case all the time. So, because not everybody has a radio. So just to review a couple things on that, it's all there under traffic patterns. And a lot of our training facilities are at towered airports and may not depart to non-towered airports, but too much. But we want to make sure they at least understand it. I've always made it a point, especially being in Chandler. I was able to go south to either Casa Grande or Ak-Chin. Ak-Chin is a great one, especially with the painting on the runways, displaced threshold, and some of that stuff. I was able to work with a taxiway that goes into a displaced threshold. That's an interesting one. And then, what are we doing to evaluate this? In the case of the instructors, how much time are we spending training that before we go into them? So we're not training in the airplane on the way to the non-towered airport. Give them a heads up on that. As I said, there's a advisory circular AC 90-66 that does a really good job of covering everything in one spot, not to mention that the AIM covers it as well. Any other questions on that? Let me see what I got up here for a chat. Oh, yeah, okay. Well, Ernie, bear with me a second. There's two others trying to get in, but they're not showing up on in my waiting room. Let's see. Nope. Um,
I just need to use that tiny CC link. I don't know
okay.
what else to say.
Yeah, Ernie and actually nobody from the FSDO was on, so I'm wondering if they even picked up on that. Because I just sent it to the last time I just sent it to the guests. But let me see here.
Hi, Phil. Terry Wolcott here. I'm from the FAST team in Las Vegas.
Hi there.
Hi, and I'm just barging into your meeting only to learn because I'm trying to set something similar up here in our district. But
No problem.
Ernie's been pinging me on the message board here. He says he's trying to get in.
Yeah, he's not even in the waiting room. So
I'm on the road again. Neil, if you're here, if you can take that tiny CC link that I sent you and email it to Ernie, please, or anyone, everyone. That's all people got to do. It's all there.
all right.
Yeah, that's not a better way of doing things, but I will be happy to put it in there.
Don't worry, we're going to talk about it today.
Yeah. Okay.
Hey, Phil, this is Craig. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Okay, so the problem is that tiny CC link will not accept our FAA Zoom accounts as legitimate.
Okay. Got it. But you were able to get in, Craig?
Well, I'm on my personal computer.
Okay. All right. Now we'll have to, I wondered if that might be a problem with the government stuff, but we'll have to work on that one. Like I said, it's the first time we're trying this, and Jim and I thought this might be an easier way where I'm not sending these things out all the time, and the whole full year's worth of meetings are in there, and you can simply click on the ones you want to plan to attend. But all right, Craig, we'll have to figure a different way then and I guess, you guys might have to use your personal computers unless we can come up with a way to bypass that. But I got a feeling we're not going to be able to bypass the FAA's firewall and that stuff.
Well, let's talk about it offline, Phil. I got a couple ideas.
You got it. Perfect. Okay. Next, let's see here. Real quick one on flight deck management. Once again, we making sure that the equipment, tow bars, oil cans, rags, and everything are secure in the back of the airplane, and that someone has a flight bag, or nowadays it's usually a backpack, is that seatbelt strap running through that, so that we're not letting that stuff fly around. That's obviously been one of the things that's been missed a lot in the flight training arena, where the stuff is not secured. So we want to make sure flight deck management is an area of operation, just like everything else. So for those of you that are doing the instructing, and those of us that are doing the evaluating, let's just encourage people to make sure that they've got that stuff secure before we get further along. So I got also asked to talk about this because of some CFI students I was working with in the past couple of weeks, the stall spin awareness. So this is obviously an operation of both the private commercial flight instructor, AZDPEAG. They're not done on the check rides, the spins that is, but remember, on the private pilot check ride, the applicant has to demonstrate a stall to the full stall, not to the first indication. And my queries with some of these CFI applicants, a lot of them claim that they have never, actually done a full stall. And it's supposed to happen on the private. Remember, the private is a full stall. The commercial is first indication, as is the ATPs. And for those CFI applicants, you've got to do whatever the examiner's requesting you to do if they're wanting you to do a private demonstration of it versus a commercial demonstration of it. Let's see. Good. Okay, thanks. Let's see. So what can we do about this? Obviously, we're not going to be spinning the airplane out there. We are going to do the stalls, but are we covering what they need to know from a knowledge portion of how the airplane is built so that it stalls from the root first out? And do they even know that? Do they understand what's exactly happening? Their standard answer for, when does it stall? At the critical angle of attack. Actually, it's exceeding the critical angle of attack. But do they understand what that is? And what happens to the angle of attack, say in a steep turn, even though they're flying level across the horizon there, maintaining their altitude? Do they understand that they're actually flying a positive angle of attack? Let's see, we just talked about that. And then spin entry and recoveries. There's still the old wives' tale that the PARE mnemonic seems to work for everything. I want to caution everybody that that is a standard spin recovery procedure when there is not one specifically stated in the manufacturer's spin recovery and the POH or the AFM. Some TTL airplanes don't have it that way. Some airplanes, the power is actually the last thing you get rid of. Maintain a lot of prop wash over the tail, depending on the kind of the airplane is. So make sure that they understand that there is a spin recovery section in their POH or AFM. And in lieu of one not being published, it'll state there in the FAA book that they recommend that the power aileron rudder elevator concept if the manufacturer did not publish one. But I am finding out that a lot of the instructors do not understand that there actually is a specific one for each type of airplane where there's differences. So we want to make sure that they understand where that is and why we need to know that. And there it is right there. It varies with each craft. There's not one size fits all. Does anyone have any questions on stall spin, either the teaching of it or the evaluating of it?
I don't have any questions, Phil, but I wanted to add, I'm also seeing a lot of weakness on factors that affect stall speed, which is relevant to this topic. You brought up load factor being one of them. It's just something I'm commonly seeing. So.
Yep, and I don't remember if I mentioned this in one of the past tests, past meetings, but there's still another one, old wives' tale, folklore, tribal knowledge, whatever you want to call it, that the lower end of the white and the lower end of the green is an indication of where the airplane will stall in landing configuration or clean configuration. This is not the case, which is why the applicants tend to be staring at the airspeed indicator when they're doing these stalls, because they're looking at that and anticipating the bottom of the white or the bottom of the green. That's based on a gross weight airplane, 1G level flight standard day. That's where that comes from. And when we are talking to them about stalls, both for those instructors out there and the examiners, when you ask the question, where's the airplane, what speed will the airplane stall at? I'm hoping that we're hearing any speed, because obviously that's the correct answer. Unfortunately, if it was up to me, we'd be demonstrating accelerated stalls to a private pilot. Why we wait till they're commercial level to demonstrate to them an accelerated stall and have them do one? I still never understood that, because that, as we know, the past couple months here, we've had some accidents relating to accelerated stalls, circling approaches and stuff like that. And especially at the instrument rating, they're still not exposed to an accelerated stall when they're doing a circle approach, circle to land on the instrument rating. They still technically haven't seen it yet because it doesn't show up until the commercial rating. So there's nothing that prevents us from having the instructors show them those. Obviously, we're not going to test them on it till we get to the commercial rating, but that is an issue, is they do not really understand what exactly is going on there. But it's a lot of things, and it would be great if we could beef up the stall spin training that's done out there instead of just showing it to them. But actually, there's plenty of videos, good videos for those things, and spend a little bit more time on the aerodynamics of the stall and the spin. Any other comments on that? Okay, I threw in another batch of scenarios here. I did taxi, takeoff. This is landings. So I'll leave that up there for just a little bit if somebody wants to screenshot it. But here's some other scenarios that we can throw out there to give them opportunity to show some mastery of the aircraft in certain conditions. Anybody think of the landing with say the left main tire? Might be able to have them demonstrate. What could they demonstrate on that maneuver? The left main tire's flat. What kind of a landing could they demonstrate to take care of that problem?
Talk about soft field.
No. Just keep in mind the left main is flat. So we want to
right crosswind.
There you go. There you go. Sure. We tend to think that it's just for the wind, right? That's all that maneuvers forward. Actually, it has a purpose to use in other arenas, and that would be one of them right there. So now your nose one, that could be your soft field right there. Demonstration of a soft field for a nose tire that is flat. That's if you happen to know that. That would be a tough one. You can see the mains, but might be on some airplanes, might be tough on the nose. But any questions on some of these scenarios up there? Okay, back to this one again. I got a few questions on this one. We still, I think, have a tendency to want the applicants to build the system in the airplane. And fortunately, they've gotten away from that stuff in the airline environments, corporate environments, and got to a point where what does the pilot need to know from where he or she is sitting in the airplane? I'm not so sure that being able to draw a propeller governor is going to take care of their problem when they have a prop governor that's not working. So there's a checklist for that. And what do they need to know? So I just made up these things from another couple instructors. We're just trying to evaluate their knowledge of the system itself. Oh, there we go. And how they interface with what's available to them. So what lights do they have? What buttons do they have? What switches do they have? And what is it? How is it powered or operated? How can it fail? What indications does the pilot have that it's failed? And what can the pilot do about it? So just running through that one again. That was a question that I got from the last meeting as well. Somebody wanted to see that again because they didn't get a chance to take a screenshot of that or copy that. Any questions on how to test systems or any best practices on how you guys like to test systems?
Hey, Phil,
Yes.
when I'm entering into systems, the portion of the practical test for systems, I like to begin with the electrical system because I kind of think of the electrical system as the brains of the operation that potentially affects so many other different subsystems or other primary systems. And so, I'll start off, okay, you have an alternator failure. Okay, what are you going to see? And what's the corrective action for that? And after they address that, then okay, then I'll ask a private pilot, does the engine quit? Okay, then that allows me to have them, or it allows them to explain to me, how the magnetos work and all that kind of stuff. Well, how do you know the magnetos are okay for today's flight? Then they'll talk about, well, the RPM drop. Okay, how much you're allowed. And it's amazing how many people do not know how much they're allowed to drop. But then from there, let's say if it's an airplane that has retractable gear, with a total electrical failure, can you extend the gear? Does the total electrical failure affect the heater? Does the total electrical failure affect your the prop feathering, which obviously it doesn't, but just so I kind of springboard off that, and it allows me to migrate into other systems through the electrical system. That's just one of the things that I do.
Oh, that's really good because it does have an effect on a lot of other systems, and it can have a lot of effects on the landing too, i.e. if it's a Cessna with the electric flaps, you're going to be making a no flap landing. If it's, say, at nighttime, you are probably going to be landing without a landing light. So there's depending on how much battery you have left and whether or not you want to use that, that battery, use up what's left of the battery. And what can you do to save the battery? That's another one is, they're not too savvy on the things that you can do to save your batteries. I mean, you have a stack of radios, they don't all have to be on. What kind of things do you think are important? And that's going to kind of be up to the pilot to determine what they think is important since they're running the show. So yeah, that's a good one, Patrick. Thanks. Any other comments on the systems portion of it? Okay. I got asked a few times, this actually came up probably a couple years ago, about the 3 hours of instrument training that's required on a private pilot. Can it be counted towards the 40 hours for the actual or simulated flight time on the instrument aeronautical experience? The answer is yes. Letter of interpretation from the FAA dated 2006, January 19th, 2006. If anybody wants to look it up, I tried to make a copy of it on here, a screenshot of it to get it up here. But it also alluded to the fact that your 50 hours of cross-country time, that can be in concert with the 40 hours of training. So you could actually do your 50 hours of PIC cross-country time while you're also doing some of that 40 hours of training, the 25 hours that doesn't need to be with a double I. But does anyone have any questions on that?
Yeah, Phil, what's the name on the letter?
I can tell you it is Gareth Gordon, Gareth Gordon, Gordon.
2006.
Yeah, January 19th, 2006. The LOI from the FAA, usually they have a stamp on their letters. If you can see, they have a date stamp up there. And this particular one did not have a date stamp. So it just says your letter dated January 19th, 2006.
Thank you.
You betcha. I knew the 3 hours counted, but I found it interesting that you can actually combine the 50 cross-country PIC with some of that 40 hours of training. So I'm sorry, the 40 hours of instrument time, not the training time. Any questions on that? All right. So here we are back to chapter 9, the supplemental. We covered this earlier. Basically, this is a chapter that seems to be forgotten. A lot of documents need to be inside this for the equipment was installed in the airplane. Also, if you look at like even a brand new Cessna, because not everything in that new Cessna was basic equipment, it was optional, but it came from the factory with the optional equipment. You will still find those that documentation in there as supplemental documentation for, say, the autopilot, or if it happens to have an ADF in it or some other type of radio. But even though it came from the factory, you will still have those supplement forms in there, documents in there to indicate what the limitations are. Because the biggest thing here is that the limitations are not, you'll find those in chapter 3 and some of them in the chapter 4, but they're not all listed in there that are specific to a piece of equipment on the airplane. And the other part of that is, what do you need to do in the event of an emergency? So like Ike was asking before about the autopilots, you know, part of the test is normally to turn it off. Do you know how to turn it off? Do you know where the circuit breaker is in case it won't shut off on its own? Can you override it and things like that? Any other questions on that? Okay. Jim?
Yes, sir.
All right, here we go. So I'll let Jim speak about this. We'll probably try this out another month, but go ahead, Jim.
Well, I apologize, guys. I'm still on the road. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
So, all right. So I might be feeling a little bit defensive, but I hope this comes across as by way of explanation. I want my friends and fellow peers to understand what Phil and I were trying to do. So, you know, you should never implement a solution unless there's a problem. The problem, as most of you know, had to do with the fact that Phil was creating a new and unique meeting every month, and he was sending that information out to a list of people by email. And pretty much every month we had multiple people contacting Phil or me, or saying that they had trouble getting in. Sometimes because it was a unique meeting every time, we would be ready to start the meeting and some of us were on one link and Phil was on a different link, and we wasted the first 10 minutes of the meeting trying to get everyone in the same meeting. So that's the problem that we were trying to solve, just so you guys know. We weren't trying to overcomplicate things for no reason. The AFTW went to this Zoom option where you can have an entire list of meetings, for example, the whole year of 2022. And with one registration, someone can sign up for the whole year's worth of meetings or whatever it is. And Phil and I talked about it, and it was working so well for the AFTW that we're like, you know what, let's just do that. And the result is that we have multiple issues that have made me totally regret that we did this for the DPs, and I apologize to everybody. One of the issues is apparently the FAA guys can't log in. Craig, I'd love to be in that discussion offline, figure out what we can do there. There's issues apparently. So one of the things with the new way is everyone needs to have their own Zoom username and password. Frankly, it surprised me that not everyone does. I thought that after the pandemic, everyone had a Zoom login, but that's what I get for looking at the world lens. So that's been an issue for some people. There's obviously people even today that didn't know how to register. Those of you who missed the live meeting, I hope you're watching this on the recording. Again, I apologize, but we thought we were simplifying things and here we are. So I don't even know if it's worth trying one more month, Phil. I think we just go back to the other way and go back to the problems that we know, but maybe I'm just a little frustrated.
Jim, this is Neil. As I said last month, I'm president of a professional organization. And for 2 years, I've been doing board meetings on Zoom. We set up one meeting. It's a recurrent meeting that happens the third Thursday of the month. It's the same Zoom login. There's no reason to set up a separate meeting for each month. Just set it up once, send it out to everybody. Everybody can put it on their calendar. You can send it out in an Outlook or a Google invite, and it's done. It's easy. It's the same thing every single month, and there's no issues that way.
That may be a better option. I am very familiar with that. I do that for my church group. We have a couple different meetings. I'm very familiar with it. The reason Phil and I decided to go the way we did is basically we wanted to know who was attending. And by requiring the registration, that got us to see who was registered beforehand, and it's easy to tell the attendance. Maybe that's not as important. It's certainly not worth the frustration. So maybe we'll try that idea and just go to a link that's the same every time. We do lose some security that way, but if we don't care who's jumping on and watching this, then it probably doesn't matter.
Right. I was going to say, is there anybody we really don't want on here?
Not really, because I record it and send the and Jim, I'm assuming that when I close this out, the recording will go the same way it always has, back to you, and then you'll create the link so individuals can watch it. Is that correct?
Affirmative.
Yeah.
I should be able to access it myself this way, which is another nice thing. But anyway, and we're really not excluding anyone. I've just, we all heard horror stories early on in the pandemic of when people started doing Zoom meetings that hackers and spammers could get in and mess up people's meetings. But until that happens, it's probably fine just to have a public link, and whoever jumps on, jumps on.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because
you can do it by invite only. It doesn't have to be open to everybody under the sun, but send the link to who you want to have it, and that's it. If they send it on to somebody else, then they send it on to somebody else.
And that's kind of what we were doing anyway. I was sending out 2 sets of emails, one to the DPE group, CC to the FSDO, and then I had a separate email because it had continuing changes to it for the guests instructors and schools, whatever. And every month there'd be another 2 or 3 that would be added to that. So basically I had 2 more, and we'll figure out something. We'll chat with Jim, we'll chat with Craig as well
Yeah.
offline and see what's going on, and then we'll figure something out. So it's
Sounds good. And thank you for giving me a minute. Again, at the risk of sounding defensive, I just wanted to give everyone a little bit of the background to know that I wasn't trying to make everyone's life difficult, but I kind of feel like it backfired on me, but we'll move forward.
no, I don't think that at all, because we're trying to find an easier way to prevent anyone from having to do a lot of typing and a lot of unnecessary emails. So, which is, by the way, mostly me anyway. So that's okay. It's part of the process, right? Orville and Wilbur didn't get it right the first time either. So we'll work on that. Okay, I planned on having an ATC individual doing some speaking this time. That didn't quite work out. So I'm going to shoot for the April meeting and get that talked to a retired ATC gentleman from the area here to do a little dissertation on correct terminology, what they're expecting, what they're wanting to hear, so on and so forth. I want to add one thing here that I left out of the slides is I want to make sure that both the DPEs, the instructors, the schools understand that for some reason there seems to be a thought process of not filing flight plans and opening and closing flight plans and simply using flight following. I just want to make sure, first of all, flight following is not an event on the check rides. It's not covered anywhere. We are supposed to ask them if they know how to open a flight plan, not a close one. They don't specifically have to do it, but I want to make sure they understand. And it's one of the things he's going to talk about is flight following does not go out of its way to look for you when you disappear off the scope. And they may know where you're headed, but they may not know the exact routing. But I want to make sure that specifically the schools understand that we still need to see them demonstrate how to open and close a flight plan. And realistically, that is the only way to go. It doesn't prevent you from using flight following. But if something happens, somebody's going to start looking for you at the appropriate times. But flight following is not the same as utilizing a flight plan in the system. So I want to emphasize that was one of the things that came out of the meeting last month too. Okay, any other questions on that? And what I'd like for the group, who's ever listening out there and who's here today, I'd like a little more input as much as I can get from you all out there, because I am still pretty far removed from the day-to-day operation of this kind of stuff. And I'd like to see exactly what's going on other than the people I get involved with in the CFI training. There's not too much else I get unless someone gives me some information on it. So I want to make sure that I'm covering the stuff that needs to be covered. I'm not missing anything that should be covered, and I'm not going over something that everybody already knows. So that would help me out a lot if I could get a lot more input on these different meetings. And even if it's not a topic that might be on the agenda, it doesn't make any difference. The agenda is pretty wide open. So I'd appreciate any input for any of those areas. Okay, appointed contact reports. This is probably may be disappearing as well. It was a valiant effort. Some of the individuals are not in their respective areas anymore. So I'll give this one last shot today to see if anybody's on here. But Brian has already called me and told me Schultz and Falcon and West Valley that there was nothing to report. Todd, you're not out there. Jim, do you have anything from your neck of the woods?
Nothing really new since last month. Just a continuing update with the transition of Westwind moving from Deer Valley to United Aviate Academy at Goodyear. They're doing great. You're going to see more and more of the Echo Foxtrot Cirrus operating out of Goodyear. I think they're over 100 students now since their first class started in December. And they're doing check rides and they're off to a great start. Not a lot going on at the Westwind at Deer Valley anymore. I think there's still just a couple students finishing up there. So Deer Valley traffic has gone down significantly. It's pretty much just AeroGuard and the locals there now. But nothing else really to share here.
Okay. Bill Scott, are you out there? I don't think he is. Nope, not. Kim is not out there, and Jared is not out there as well. So, but I think what I'm going to do is chat with Jim here and revamp this and just have them report to me or Jim anything at all, and I'll just specifically bring it up instead of trying to get the 6 people.
And for anyone who's new, I think it's worth mentioning.
We lost you, Jim. If you can hear me, Jim, we lost you.
Kind of seemed like it wasn't even necessary anymore. So,
Yeah.
or that, or you know, people would rather just work directly with Phil, whatever it is. But you know, if it's not needed, then we can simplify.
Yeah. So we'll chat about that. It's probably just going to go to just funnel it through myself or Jim, and then you know, put it in the meeting as the things come up. Okay. Standing topics. Any issues and problems? And actually, let me go past this stuff here. This is kind of old. We have some airspace issues. Craig just sent out a notice about Coolidge with some parachute training out there. I'm sure everyone got a hold of that for the 26th, 27th, 28th, somewhere around there. Any other airspace issues that anybody has?
Hey, Phil, I don't know, I may have missed it in a previous presentation, but I noticed that the Mobile Airport has been designated Benson Airport.
Say that again?
The Mobile Airport down in Rainbow Valley is now called Benson.
Okay.
And I understand they're doing halo drops there, but there's no parachute symbol there, even though they changed the name of the airport.
Okay,
So
but it's still closed to the public, right?
As far as I know, yes.
Okay. All right. Okay, any feedback from the schools or instructors?
Say, Phil, on that Coolidge, this is Phil. On that Coolidge activity down there, the Air Force Academy, that actually starts on the 18th and goes through the 25th, and they're going to be flying gliders down there and CFI training. They're encouraging everybody to stay away, basically.
Yeah, it's probably a good idea. Yeah, I didn't remember when it started. I know I just read Craig's thing earlier today.
Yeah, no problem.
Okay. We don't have any mentoring going on right now, of course. So there's nothing really from any of the committees, since I'm pretty much the only person on it. From the AFTW, Jim, anything from them?
So I was not able to attend the live meeting today. Lee, if you were there, or anyone else, if you want to chime in. I mean, we don't need to restate a bunch of stuff here. If everything went well, I'm going to have the recording up tonight. So along with me, I encourage everyone to watch the recording of today's meeting. I did help put the agenda together, so they should have talked about the approach that changed at Coolidge. Of course, we should be avoiding it while the Air Force is there, but off the top of my head, I think it was the RNAV 2-3 approach into Coolidge, and the procedures that the AFTW made at Rocco intersection. We were calling it the other stack. That is currently not available because that approach was changed by the FAA in the last revision. So we took that off the AFTW website. That's why you're not finding it there. So stand by. We're going to get a new procedure for the new approach is my understanding of the plan. The ASAG is working with the AFTW on new frequencies. We're kind of in a gray area the way we're using the 2285 and the Rainbow Valley practice area frequencies. I know, especially that Rainbow Valley one, that's technically an air to ground frequency that's owned by Lufthansa, and they're nice to let us use it. But we're trying to, the ASAG is really taking the lead on trying to get a more official way to have air-to-air frequencies for all 4 practice areas. And let's see, anything else, Lee, that would be good for this group to know about from that meeting?
Tim made a nice presentation about the MOA project. And
oh yes, that was a big one.
yes, when the document comes out for us to make comments, it'll be really important to submit as many letters as we can. APA will make a list of points from which we can write our letters. You know, they're talking about coming down to 100 feet in the Tombstone MOA and 500 feet in the other MOAs, and just getting in and out of the airports within those MOAs is a safety issue that needs to be figured out. And also, Ernie made a presentation about a hypoxia nitrogen chamber. Terry, you want to talk about that?
Hi, everybody. Terry again from Las Vegas. We hosted the PROT, which is the Portable Reduced Oxygen Training Enclosure, which is the folks from Aeronautical Division in Oklahoma City. And they do a traveling roadshow with this device, which is shipped in on a truck. And then the 4 or 5 physiologists come in with it, set it up. And then the physio sets up the logistics as far as scheduling airmen for it. But it's 5 airmen at a time. They do a pre-briefing with the physiologist. Then they have a chamber session, which doesn't last much more than 5 minutes. And then there's a post-briefing. And there's also available a ground session about physiology. So it's quite valuable training, and considering there's a shortage of, you know, true hypoxia or oxygen chambers, pressure chambers around, this is like the next best thing to recognize your symptoms. And when we had it for a week, and we ran about 200 air persons through it and another 130 or so through the ground school, and a lot of pilots that come to the safety meetings who didn't, you know, make an effort, they regretted it because they realized, now I don't have another opportunity. So it's really a good training, and the best way to learn your symptoms of hypoxia, because the availability of this sort of thing is very limited. So we had a pretty good response. We had it for a week, and it was, you know, nothing but positive reviews, and all the flight schools came. We got all kinds of people, but it was really a good thing for the local airmen. Is there any questions I can answer? It's not pressurized. They displace the oxygen with, Mike corrected me earlier. I said carbon dioxide. He said nitrogen. Yeah,
Nitrogen. Yeah.
nitrogen, to lower the percentage of oxygen to reflect similar to that at about 26,000 feet. So you're instantly hypoxic when you walk in it, and you sit down, and they give you a clipboard with some questions and math questions, and then that you have your oxygen mask standing by. So you're closely watched by these physiologists. So it's really good. I just really strongly emphasize everybody who can get into it should sign up and should show up, because it's a rare opportunity for people. And a lot of people have said it saved their lives. So
Great. Right. Thanks.
Ernie might get it in January of 2023.
yeah, Ernie and Craig are the ones to talk to. Right now they just have January of 2023. I don't think they have specific dates yet. They're trying to see how much interest there will be and whether there's enough folks to merit keeping it for 2 weeks, which I would think in the Phoenix area you could do that. But they've got plenty of time to get this organized. But I set up an online scheduling website for it, and so people could book their 15-minute increments, and then we had people check in early. We stressed check in early, and I was actually shocked at how many people either no-showed or showed up late. But we did have a lot of people show up early, so we ended up just replacing those missing people with the other people that were waiting. So it goes fast once they get it up and running.
If you charge money for it, I bet less people would sign up, but I'll bet more of them would show up.
You know that you're right, because it's free. I think maybe it wasn't as, appreciated, shall we say.
Mhm. Yeah. Okay, thank you.
So it sounds like maybe an action item for now, if any of the leaders of the schools think that they would have a large group, is the best thing just to contact Ernie or Craig and let them know, hey, January 23, we could have, X number of people, or just to, would that be good to know, Craig or Ernie, to have that interest now?
Are they? I'm not sure. Are they on? I could relay the message to them.
I think Craig made it.
Sorry.
Yeah, Craig's there. Okay, well, we'll get with them on that. Craig,
This is Phil. I was
Yeah.
on the meeting too, and Ernie was specifically asking if the flight schools would be interested, if they could let him know and how many, and that'll enable him to build the case for how long, and because he really wants to also offer it to all of the GA people, not in the flight schools. And if once he has your information, the flight school information, then he knows how many to offer to. So great.
Yeah, great.
There might even be some interest from the balloon community, because there's some of us that will do some higher altitude flights where we are on oxygen.
Great, okay. Craig, are you still there? Okay, I was going to ask Craig if he had anything from the FAST team. Is there anyone else on here that has any information regarding the FAST team? No, okay. All right, so any questions or comments from any of the DPEs on anything else? Questions or comments from any of our guests?
Hi there. I got a random question. My name's Randy. Used to be a CFI in the Arizona area. Random question. Is there a rough ETA when the ACS for the CFI initial CFII might come online, or that may change from the PTS version?
I have an answer for that. It's still a ways off. I think they generally put those out in, June of the year that they put it out. And I personally haven't heard anything from anyone at the FSDO regarding that. I checked with Craig, I think a few months ago, to see if he had heard anything, but not so far. There hasn't been anything yet. It sure will be nice when that does get done, because it will definitely standardize all the areas of operation. I've already seen it. It basically just refers you to the private and commercial ACSs. So it won't be a real thick book, but it'll say, for weather information, it'll say see private and commercial, since they're exactly the same, commercial and private weather information, and you'll be doing it from that standpoint. But I've not heard anything so far.
Okay, thank you.
Anyone else? And I don't know if anybody from the FSDO is still on there or not. Let's see. Doesn't look like it. Nope. Okay. All right. Well,
Hey, Phil.
yes. Yeah.
We just got to remember, when we're conducting practical tests, we don't get priority over anybody. And so, we can make requests and stuff like that, but I would avoid the temptation of saying that, we're doing a practical test, or we're conducting an FAA test or something like that, because we have no priority over anybody else. And the FAA has mentioned that many times before. And so occasionally this comes up. And so I think it's important to restate.
You're right. And you and I talked about that the other day, because it popped up again a few weeks ago. It's tough just trying to get these things done in the time frame you're trying to do it with what we have around here for traffic. There's also a way to express what you need to do without saying we have priority, because the check rides do not have that priority. But, you know, if there's a way to express that, is it okay if, you know, we cut in front of you here, whatever, but I know sometimes the way it's stated on the radio is pretty off-putting. So good point, Patrick. Thanks. Anything else? Well, okay, thanks for attending. Our next meeting will be April 12th. And once again, you can send anything to myself at gmail.com. We also have a DPEAG email at AZDPEAG@gmail.com. So thanks again for attending. Thanks for your time, and we'll see you next month.
Good job, Phil.
Thanks.
You bet. See ya.